Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Week 5 of the high school football season. We are here at Olentangy Liberty High School for our weekly Facebook Live. I'm Dave Purpura, along with Jarrod, Ulrey, and our guest to start the show today, the coach of the 3-1 Olentangy Liberty Patriots, Steve Hale. Good to see you, Coach. How are you?
Thanks a lot. Good. I'm doing well.
Been a fun start for you guys. What have been your impressions? A couple wins in a row here. What do you really like about this team, having won 3 of your first 4?
Well, they've faced a lot of adversity already. They've fought through that. We've had a few injuries. We've had several lineup changes, and our guys have fought through that and come back. We had obviously a disappointing loss week 2 to a very good Wayne team, but we bounced back well, and we feel like we're getting back on target. But we have certainly another big challenge coming up this week.
Sure.
You guys have a group of really experienced players with Mitchell Oakley, Edward Warner, Johnny Wiseman. Is there, like, you guys are maybe a little bit younger on the lines. Is that an area that you guys have continued to show improvement in this year?
Yeah, absolutely. Our offensive line has worked very hard to take away that young tag. We have 4 new starters in that group, and it's been a different group of people at different times. So they're doing a great job. They get better every single week. They've taken ownership of their role on the team. And Nick Rossi's leading them as the senior that's back this year, and he's doing a great job of pulling that group together.
Special season for you guys last year. 10-0, you get to a state semifinal. Special in its own, I'm sure, but how much so was it, considering you've been here since the very beginning of this program in 2003?
Yeah, the CSGO, I think we were Division 4.
Yeah.
The first year we started in 2003, and to get to the Division 1 state semifinals is amazing. We just had a special group of kids, and they did great things all year long and overcame just tremendous challenges, and it was just a wonderful season. It was a exciting time for all of us the whole year. So yeah, it's great to see where we've come from and where we are now.
Kind of a steady progression throughout that time, building to the
yeah,
place you
we've had several playoff appearances, and we've had we've knocked on the door quite a few times. But to get where we were last year was certainly a step in the right direction, a step forward.
Yeah. Last year, great game against Pickerington North, 33-28. You guys were able to win that game. What are some of the keys you see heading into this matchup tomorrow night?
Oh boy, we got to do a lot of things well. They are very, very talented. They have tremendous athletes, probably the best quarterback in Central Ohio. They can throw the ball around. They got great receivers. They're very aggressive defensively. Scholarship players. So we're going to be challenged in every aspect of the game. We're going to have to be very disciplined. Won't be able to turn the ball over. Can't have penalties. So whoever does the better job of doing that will obviously have a better chance of winning.
Well, hey, Coach, you've been in the midst of preparations. We will let you get back to work. Thank you for coming over and standing.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much.
All right,
thanks, guys.
Coach Steve Hale, Olentangy Liberty Patriots, 3-1 against 3-1. Jarrod, this definitely is one of the games of the game of the week, as we've designated. I believe you're going to be here for this
right.
one.
Absolutely.
It was a fun one last year, as you mentioned, with some big-time trick plays, gadget plays.
Oh, that's right. And I'm sure that there's going to be a different formula this year for Pickerington North. The one thing that's been really impressive about them, yes, we know about Jimmy Wyrick. We know about some of these other offensive skill guys. They got Ty Wiley and Chris Scott. We've talked about them. Defensively, I think, is where they've been, maybe not necessarily surprisingly, but they've been so impressive on defense. Yeah. That's what's really impressed me, I'll tell you that. Not just Nick Giardina. They have a lot of other guys, too, who've really stood out so far. Ben Johnson had a great game last week, and yeah, I think that they're going to be a tough challenge for Liberty to figure out how to solve that.
Coach Hale mentioned the loss to Huber Heights Wayne. Both of these teams have what you could call, good loss against good competition, both against state and area teams. Pickerington North having lost to Centerville a couple weeks ago. Those are the kinds that kind of strike me as they can make you better, embolden you down the stretch.
For sure, and Centerville is 4-0, and Wayne, I believe, is 3-1, and their loss was to this team that's really not. They're a high school team technically, but they were so impressed. The team that Wayne lost to is a really loaded team. So I think these are definitely 2 teams that are going to be in this playoff race the entire season. And this is, for playoff points, this gives the winner a big boost, especially Pickerington North, because the OCC Ohio was so good. Every game is going to feel like a playoff game starting next week for teams in the OCC Ohio. And I think that the OCC Buckeye is not. I think it's probably an improved league from last year.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
But yeah, I don't know that it's as good as the OCC Ohio, but it sure is good with Olentangy Orange.
I think it's better than last year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Original Olentangy. We'll talk about them in a few minutes as well. can't overlook the Westerville schools. See what they can do.
They seem like
year.
they're getting better. For sure. I mean, Westerville South was 1-9 last year. They're a competitive team. I mean, they got a couple of losses. Westerville North is 2-2 also.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and they're taking on New Albany, who's another 2-2 team tomorrow night. Getting into some of these other matchups, another 3-1 versus 3-1. Gahanna at Dublin Kaufman. Gahanna coming off a 40-point performance against New Albany last week. Dublin Kaufman coming off its first loss. How are they going to respond after they lose to Olentangy 31-14?
Well, that's a good question.
Not to pose a tough one at you, yeah.
I mean, I don't think we really know enough about Kaufman at this point because the first 3 teams they played were not on their level.
Oh, yeah,
obviously. So I think this is, they're going to. I got a feeling they're going to play better. Will they play good enough to beat Gahanna? That's the question because Gahanna seems much improved from last year. I got a chance to watch them last week for the first time this season.
Yeah.
And the thing about, you look at the stats of Mike Lowry, they're actually a little bit not quite as good. He's thrown for maybe like a couple hundred fewer yards than last year. But the reason for that is actually it doesn't have anything to do with him. It has to do with their more balanced offense this year. They really struggled to run the ball all of last year. A big reason that they went 5-5 and weren't able to get over the hump in a lot of games. This year they got Justice Harris, who's rushed for over 500 yards. And there's not as much pressure on Mike Lowry. He's got a better team around him. There's no question about that.
And that's one that kind of begs the question, kind of like with this game, is it going to be a high-scoring one or more defensive? With those 2 locked up, I think it's got an equal chance of being either one of them.
Yeah, so. Kaufman I believe they had 3 turnovers in that game last week that were. So that's a big key for this too.
Yes.
The team that is less sloppy, because it looks really tight on paper. So, team that makes fewer mistakes may make the difference this week.
One of the area's undefeated teams is 4-0 Hilliard Bradley. They'll look to go to 5-0 as they play Thomas Worthington. One of the best stories of the year so far, and they were this close to being 4-0 last week, and yours truly eating crow, as I was the only person who picked Worthington Kilbourne, and it came down to just that much. It was a 2-point conversion that didn't go through.
Right.
Kilbourne beat Thomas, but we'll see. Does Bradley keep rolling? And I'm curious to see how Thomas Worthington responds to that adversity this week.
No, absolutely. And I was talking about the Pickerington North, how I was impressed with their defense. I think that Bradley's probably got a really underrated defense too. We had, I believe his name was Cannon Blauser, was our athlete of the week this week. 20 tackles last week.
3 sacks.
3 sacks. So and I guess one thing that stood out to me when I thought about this matchup is both teams are coming off very emotional games.
Yeah.
Thomas is coming off this game against Kilbourne. Bradley's played probably 2 really emotional games in a row against the 2 Hilliard teams.
Yeah.
So, who has an emotional hangover, that could make a difference this week.
And it's not going to get any easier for Thomas Worthington's defense trying to contain all those receivers that we've talked about from Hilliard Bradley over the last couple of weeks. Bradley trying to get to 5-0 for the 2nd year in a row. Yet another 3-1 team, the Reynoldsburg Raiders, trying to continue building on them. They're having beaten Olentangy a couple weeks ago, really helped get them going. Beat Central Crossing last week. Now they take on John Magistro's Westerville Central Warhawks tomorrow night.
One thing when I was talking to Coach Buddy White earlier this week, that was maybe a little striking to me, is that he talked about how, we're 3-1, but we're not satisfied. We didn't really play very well last week, and we know that. That's, this is the direction he's wanted this program to go ever since he took over. He wanted it to be where, hey, we're 6-4 last year. We're not satisfied with moral victories. We want to make the playoffs. We want to be a playoff team every year. We want to be a great team, and I think that's great. That's great to see. And obviously every team wants that, but the fact that Reynoldsburg was down for so long, that's makes that impressive to me.
Well, the funny thing that struck me, I was driving home last week, I was listening to the AMA20 scoreboard show that Lee Cochran and Ryan Baker host, and he gave them, I think, maybe the same thing he told you. It's like, well, they're going to face a Reynoldsburg team that isn't very happy with itself, and what you said just folded right into that. Westerville Central, they're looking to bounce back too. Alan Smith, we've talked about him a couple times.
He rushed for 1 yard last week. So.
Yeah, and granted, this is against this Pickerington North team that's going to be coming up here tomorrow night. So it wasn't against a slouch of a defense by any means, but still, that's pretty striking, and he wants to get back off of that.
Right, I know Coach Magistro also told me on Saturday that he wants his team to have more of a balanced offense anyway. So this whole thing of, teams are going to focus on Alan Smith, that doesn't necessarily bother them because they want to be able to pass the ball too.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Tomorrow night, you will be here. I will be on the other side of town as Pickerington Central tries to go to Form 1 as they take on 2-2 Upper Arlington. This has been a thriller the last couple times they've hooked up. UA 35-29 in overtime last year. Arlington beat them in the playoffs 2 years ago, 37-27. It's going to be an uphill climb for UA. They had a lot of injuries coming out of that loss to Westerville South last week. Lost at least one offensive lineman for the year, potentially two. Their quarterback hurt his shoulder when he was sacked, leading to the first touchdown of the game. They're going to be in rough shape against a very good Central. They're going to be in rough shape coming into a matchup against a very good Pick Central team. Probably about the
maybe one of the only chances Upper Arlington is going to have is if they can get some of these young skill position players that Pickerington is. Their running back, he's their #1 running back this year for Pickerington Central, and he's in that role for the first time. Demetric Crenshaw, their quarterback, he's a young player. He's starting for the first time this year. These guys have been through. I mean, they've played a tough schedule, so they've been through some battles. But how will they respond against, as they go deeper and deeper into the season and face more and more tough defenses and things like that? So,
you could argue UA is facing a must-win every week from here, because they've got Kaufman and Davidson, who they've struggled against in recent years. Pick Central, who they've done well against in recent years, but the situations were different. And by the way, a nice feature on the tight ends today from Central. With
I talked to both of those. Yeah, Trenton Gillison and Alex Morgan. Those guys both talked about how they're really hungry for this game. So
I can't blame them at all.
After a couple of losses, I mean, very few teams have beaten Pickerington Central the last few years.
One thing that makes them all the more amazing, they're only 11th in Region 3 in the playoffs. For that schedule they've played, they've only lost once to Trotwood Madison, and they're still 11th.
A long way to go.
Oh, absolutely. Wins every week will help them from here on out. A few other games we want to touch on as we are running short on time. Quite a few intriguing matchups this week. You mentioned a few, starting with Academy trying to bounce back from that loss to London, taking on Whitehall.
Well, I got a chance to talk to Reedy coach Brian Cross, and he's like, maybe the best team in the MSL Ohio might be London. I mean, they played Academy in week 1, and Academy, that game kind of got away from Reedy. The Academy beat them 31-0. I think this Academy team they're going to be on the cusp of making the playoffs, I think, this year. I mean, they're 3-1. They've got a really good running game, really good passing game. Whitehall, they are, they had a breakout performance by Raymel Bird this week. So we'll see what happens in that. I think that could be a really interesting matchup.
A few marquee headlines in the City League. A couple 4-0 teams with Walnut Ridge and Marion Franklin are going to face themselves against Eastmoor Academy, a big city south there, and Marion Franklin against West. Respectively. Interesting matchups for the Scots and for the Warriors, for the Red Devils tomorrow night.
Well, the thing about Eastmoor is that they may only be 2-2, but they've probably played the toughest schedule of any of these City South teams. They played Westerville Central, and they played Lima Senior, and this is a matchup that means a lot to them. There's actually this thing called the Bell. The winner of their matchup gets this trophy every year. So this means a lot to Eastmoor, and they're playing at home. So I don't think there's, maybe on paper Walnut Ridge looks like the better team, but I think that could be a coin toss type of game, really.
2-2 Canal Winchester. I'll be at this game along with our Frank Dorena in about 3 hours or so as they take on 1-3 Westland. Westland got a bit of a setback this week. They lost their quarterback for the rest of the season. Taekwon Workman, boy, I hope I'm pronouncing the young man's name right. That's going to be a little bit of a struggle looking at a Canal team that's trying to bounce back from a loss.
Another game that seemed interesting is Worthington Kilbourne at Hartley this week. If Hartley has several games on their schedule where the teams are kind of struggling, so maybe they can get this kind of win this week. I'm sure that would be a big boost to their potential playoff run.
2-2 Darby and 2-2 Jerome. That is a league game. The rest of the OCC divisions, this is the final non-league week before they start the league. But right now, that's an OCC Cardinal battle between 2 teams.
I guess that'll be a matchup that their season's kind of, every week is going to be very important.
Yeah, absolutely, especially after some of those early losses.
A couple other games I wanted to mention. Reedy is playing at Liberty Union. I mentioned them earlier here. Both teams 3-1. And I'll tell you, I was really impressed with Liberty Union coach Brian Johnson when I talked to him earlier this year. He's a former Gahanna and Grandview assistant. So that's going to be a really cool matchup, I think. And then another one from the city we didn't mention, Northland at Mifflin.
That's right.
That's going to be a really important City North matchup. Mifflin's going to try to bounce back after losing to Beechcroft. Northland's 2-2. a lot of things on the line there. So.
Absolutely, and as we mentioned, next week was going to be the first week of league play for the majority of OCC teams. It's what we're going to be talking about most of the time next week. We'll let you know where we'll be coming up in a few days. That'll wrap it up from Olentangy Liberty. For Jarrod, Ulrey, I'm Dave Purpura. So long, everybody.